Good evening. The time is 7 p.m. Today is Thursday, February 9th. I'd like to call this special called Impact Fee Advisory Committee meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Dipple.
Here.
Delory.
Here.
Mata.
Here.
Onken. Guerra.
Here.
Stiegel.
Here.
James.
Here.
Chase.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum. Item number 2, citizen comments. At this time, if any members of the public would like to speak, you are invited to speak now. Please limit your time to 3 minutes and fill out a citizen comments form. Seeing none, I will close citizen comments. Item number 3, consider impossible action. 3A, discuss impact fee update process and future meetings. Per City Council's direction, the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is acting as the Impact Fee Advisory Committee.
Will Atkinson, for the record, Director of Planning. So this is the first meeting that we're holding regarding the Impact Fee Advisory Committee. From every 5 years, as far as I understand it, and they'll be able to provide more information. The city has to assess its current impact fee rates for water and wastewater per state law. And so that's what we were doing. And as stated, the City Council had assigned the Planning and Zoning Commission as the committee. We have Grady Reed with HDR Engineering here with us. He is the consultant on the group, and we also have Leon Barba, our city engineer, here in the audience as well, if you'll have questions.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for having me as we go through this process of updating your impact fees. As Will said, my name's Grady Reed. I'm a project manager with HDR Engineering. I'm based out of our Austin office, so I'm just right up the road. I've been in the industry almost 25 years, and I was the project manager for the last impact fee update, which was completed in 2017. So really what we wanted to do tonight, y'all aren't going to be making any decisions tonight. Tonight's just informational and background information. Nothing is going to be specific necessarily to the city of Kyle. We just wanted to start out with a little bit of a background on what impact fees are. Some of y'all may be familiar with impact fees, and some of you may have no idea what an impact fee is. So we just really kind of wanted to start there and keep this relatively simple, and really just start by asking that simple question: is what is an impact fee? And so if you're not familiar, an impact fee, it's a one-time upfront payment that's levied on new or expanded development. And the design behind these fees, or the concept behind these fees, is that these fees help the city to recoup the cost of providing capacity within their water and wastewater system for new growth. So if I'm a new customer that comes on and I connect to the system, then I can pay an impact fee because the city has invested dollars in adding new capacity, or I'm using existing capacity that the city's already constructed to serve me water and wastewater. Likewise, if there is an existing development, and say they have a 5/8" meter and they want to upsize that development for whatever reason, and they need a larger meter, that's the expanded development part of this, and you can go in and levy an impact fee on them for the difference between what that fee would be for the 2" meter and the 5/8" meter. Just so you're aware, impact fees are normally assessed at time of plat, and they are normally collected whenever the building permit is issued. So as we're going through this process, plats that come in between now and whenever a council takes action on these fees, they will be assessed the existing impact fees. Once council takes action and revises the fees, then any new developments that come in after that date would be assessed, or comes in for platting after that date, would be assessed the new updated fees. Just so you're aware, if you want to do any research on your own, impact fees in Texas are contained within Chapter 395 of the Texas Local Government Code. So we've touched on this a little bit, but impact fees came about many years ago. They actually started on the West Coast in California. and then they kind of migrated towards Texas. Once they made it to Texas, we really saw them a lot in Central Texas as well as in the Metroplex near Dallas. And we had a lot of communities, Kyle included, in which there was just rapid development, and especially with Kyle and a lot of the other smaller towns in the Central Texas area. Those towns were trying to make the transition from kind of being that small rural community to all of a sudden seeing all this development and needing new water capacity, new wastewater capacity to serve all this development. And so the question kind of became, well, who really should be paying for all of this development? Should that be our existing customers, or should we try to shift a little bit more of that cost burden to these new customers, since they're the ones that are causing this need for this new capacity to be constructed? So if there's no impact fees, then that question is really easy to answer. The ratepayers are going to pick up 100% of the cost of providing capacity to these customers. Every pipeline you build, every wastewater treatment plant expansion, all of that is going to go into your water and wastewater rates and be borne by all of the ratepayers of the system. If there are impact fees, the costs are shared. Now, you'll notice I didn't say that if there are impact fees, that growth is paying 100% of the cost of growth. A lot of times that's the way impact fees are sold, and it pains me whenever impact fees are sold that way, because the reality is that's just not the way that impact fees work. But for cities that do have impact fees, it does shift more of the cost burden to new development. And really where we see your existing ratepayers still picking up some of the tab, a lot of times it's just a timing issue. Before growth occurs, you have to go out and build new pipelines or increase a water treatment plant capacity or something like that. And so you're paying for that up front, whether you cash fund it or whether you debt fund it, you're still making those debt payments up front. And then you're basically, as growth occurs, you're kind of, in a sense, reimbursing yourself with impact fees. So in that interim period, the costs are shared between those new customers that are coming onto the system and your existing ratepayers, because you do still have to make those debt service payments, even though the growth may not be there to utilize the full capacity of those projects. The ultimate goal of impact fees is really to primarily ensure that infrastructure is there, it is in place. It gives the city another funding mechanism to try to fund that infrastructure and stay a little bit ahead of growth. So the City of Kyle's impact fees were last updated in 2017. By statute, you do have to update them every 5 years, so it is time to update them again and go through this process. The current impact fees for the city for the water utility is $3,535 per LUE. For the wastewater utility, it's $2,826 per LUE, for a total of $6,361 per LUE. An LUE is a living unit equivalent. It is normally defined by meter size. So I believe for the city of Kyle, an LUE is defined as a 5/8" meter. So what you'll see is whenever we do the studies and we present the results of the study, is that impact fees are scaled based on meter size. So if I am a development, I'm a restaurant or office building or something like that, and I need a 2-inch meter, according to the American Water Works Association, you can put about 8 times the amount of water through a 2-inch meter as you can through a 5/8" meter. So their impact fees would be 8 times this per LUE impact fee that you have now. So that's just something to keep in mind, that these do scale as meter sizes go up. And that's a cost out. That's a function of cost allocation and a way to allocate those costs to these projects back to those customers, especially those larger customers. Because if you have a customer that comes in and puts in a 2-inch meter, a 4-inch meter, a 6-inch meter, you have to have the capacity to serve that meter. It doesn't matter if they use the full capacity of that meter or not. And so the city does have to go out and make sure that they do have adequate infrastructure in place. So as those larger meter sizes come in, they will pay more in impact fees. The way that we do our impact fees is we basically design them in a component fashion. So on the water side, we'll basically sum up cost for supply and treatment, water storage, water pumping, water transmission, and on the wastewater side, we look at treatment, pumping, and interceptors. The reason that we do this is because Chapter 395 says that if a developer were to come in and construct a piece of infrastructure that is on your capital improvement program that you're using to determine what these impact fees are, then they're due a credit. Now, Chapter 395 is not very well written, and that's all that it says. There's one sentence in all of Chapter 395 that deals with a credit, and it just says they're due a credit. It doesn't say how you determine that credit. It doesn't say what the credit is supposed to be. So we develop these impact fees in component pieces because, for example, we'll have an elevated storage impact fee and say that's $500 per OUE. So if I'm a developer and I really need this storage tank, and I come to the city and the city says, well, yes, we're going to build that storage tank, but we're probably not going to build it for another 6 years. And the developer says, okay, I'll pay for the storage tank, I'll build it, and then I'll dedicate it to the city. In that case, that developer would be due a credit against the impact fee. So the starting point generally for negotiations on what that credit is will be whatever that piece is that's associated with, in this case, elevated storage. So that's why we do this. Whenever we're done with this and we sum all those up, that produces a maximum impact fee amount that is subject to council decision on that or a lesser amount. So basically the process that we're going through is to determine what the maximum impact fees can be. And then when this goes to council, council can decide to set those fees anywhere from 0 to whatever that maximum number is. So several steps that we'll have to go through, and we've started a lot of these. The first is we have to define the impact fee service area and the land uses within that area. Normally that's the city's ETJ, and that's what we would propose to use this time around as well. From after that, then we estimate the water and wastewater utility demands. Quite honestly, that has nothing to do with the impact fee and what the impact fee is, but Chapter 395 says that we have to do it. And so we do it. We then compare those existing and projected utility demands to the city's existing capacity, just to kind of see what that balance is. The real thought process there is that whenever Chapter 395 was written, it was thought that cities would come in, do a land use plan. They would assign a water and wastewater use per acre depending on the different land use types. Determine what their current and future demands were going to be from that land use plan. Compare that to their existing capacity, figure out what the deficiencies were within their system, and then construct a CIP based upon that. We generally don't do that in kind of more modern engineering way of thinking. We have other ways that we can forecast demands and then build a CIP off that. But we still do have to follow the steps of Chapter 395, and so those first 3 bullets really, again, they won't necessarily factor into what the actual impact fee is, but we will do them so that we're compliant with Chapter 395. Once we've done that, we then will identify an amount and cost of the existing available capacity and new facility needs, which is basically your 10-year CIP. We do have the 10-year CIP and costs have already been identified by the city, and so that's been reviewed and we have that. The other part of this is that existing available capacity. So Chapter 395 says that not only can we wrap new projects, the cost of those new projects into the CIP, but we can also take existing assets that the city has that has excess capacity available. So we've done that as well. We've been working with city staff to identify what the current assets are within the city. As best we can identify the cost of those assets as they were constructed from the fixed assets model that the city uses. And then those assets that do have excess capacity, we can roll a portion of the construction cost of those assets into the impact fee as well. Then what we'll end up with basically is a weighted cost of existing and new capacity per living unit equivalent or LUE. From there, Chapter 395 says that we have to do one of 2 options. Once we have that cost, we then either can calculate a rate credit against that maximum, which the idea behind a rate credit is we go through a series of assumptions and try to figure out as best we can how much of those new projects these new customers are going to pay through their utility rates. With the idea being is that we do not want to double charge them for these capital improvements. So we don't want to levy an impact fee and then try to recoup that same amount of cost through their utility rates. The second option is to just cut whatever that calculated weighted cost is and just cut that in half. Normally, using the rate credit method is more beneficial to the city, and then it provides a higher impact fee. We'll see whenever we get through the study. In this case, we may just take the 50% credit just because of some of the fee amounts, but we'll talk about that at the next meeting. And so whenever we're done with that, whether we take the rate credit or we just cut the fee in half, that is the maximum impact fee per OUE that City Council then gets to make a decision on. So where do y'all come in to this, and why are you here, and you know, how quickly are we going to be done with this? You don't have to have impact fee committee meetings anymore. The charge of the Impact Fee Advisory Committee is to basically verify that the land use appears to be reasonable, that the CIP that we've developed appears to be reasonable, and that the maximum impact fee has been reasonably calculated. I will use the term reasonable a lot. I don't necessarily know all of y'all's backgrounds. Maybe some of y'all are land use planning experts. Maybe some of y'all are engineers. But likely not all of y'all are engineers. And so whenever we present the CIP to you, that's not going to be something that you may necessarily know a whole lot about. But whenever we present the report, we will make sure that we fully explain where all of our data came from, where we got it from. You'll be able to ask any questions so that you can satisfy to yourself that it appears that we have done this in a reasonable manner according to Chapter 395. That's y'all's charge, again, is to find reasonableness in this fee. The committee can recommend a fee amount to City Council. Some committees will, some committees will not. That's not something that you have to do, and that's something that we can make a decision on as we move forward through this process. So once y'all have adopted the impact fee report and you found that everything appears to be reasonable, and perhaps make a recommendation to council on what that fee is, then we will present the report very briefly to City Council, basically just giving them some background on saying, hey, this is what we did, this is what we think the new fee may be. And really the primary purpose of that meeting is to have City Council set a public hearing date. Chapter 395 says that if a city has an existing impact fee and is just updating that fee, which is what the City of Call is doing, you only have to have one public hearing. You do not, this group will not have to have any public hearings. That public hearing occurs at City Council. So public hearing, the City Council will set a public hearing date. We have to notice at least 30 days prior to that public hearing. And then City Council will conduct a public hearing and can take action on the revised impact fees that same night. I know that doesn't necessarily impact y'all. Y'all's work will be done by that time, but just to give y'all some idea kind of where it's going to go whenever y'all are done with this. So this is our anticipated schedule at this point. It's February 9th. We're going through an impact fee 101. It is anticipated that we will present the draft impact fee report to this committee at your March 16th meeting. And at that time, we will walk you as best we can, kind of step through all the calculations again, where all of our data came from, where all of our assumptions came from. At March, we have we have y'all approving the report on March 28th. If after March 16th you look at the report and you're like, there's no way I can get through this in 2 weeks, or feel comfortable approving the report in 2 weeks, then we can certainly push that March 28th date back if we need to. We want y'all to feel comfortable whenever you're approving the report. We don't want to feel like we're rushing you into anything. But right now we have tentatively said at least that y'all would approve the report on March 28th. After you approve report on March 28th, your part is done, then we would go to City Council on April 4th, present that report again very, very briefly to City Council. Primarily, we want them to set a public hearing date at their April 4th meeting, and then we think we could hold that public hearing on May 16th and have possible council action at that time. So that is the process that we're planning on going through. Said for y'all, we really only have 2 more meetings possibly for y'all, one on March 16th and one on March 28th. So if you have any questions at this point about the process, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Item number 4, adjournment. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed.
All in favor, say aye.
We are adjourned.